Okay, it's recording. Cool. So, have you all used plugins? Any plugins? No? Okay. So some examples for plugins I would say is, have you heard of this plugin called Git Open? Both of you? No?
Yes, recently it got released, right?
Yeah. So maybe I can show you an example, right? Like,
It opens the README kind of.
yeah. So GitHub. Let's say I go to a blog and I do Git open, and this opens the whatever I have over here. Okay, so the remote URL, and it will just open it in the browser. So Git open is basically a plugin, a Git plugin, I would say. So yeah, so this is the repository for it. So how does it work and all? Okay, I don't know too much internal details, but the software itself is located over here. So git hyphen open. So what is this thing? Does Git provide this Git open thing? No, it does not. This is written by this person named Paul Irish, and so he extended the features of Git. So usually people call this as extension or plugin. So you plug something in along with the core of the software. So and this is not built into inside the core itself and built separately usually. And there it's possible that the core also has some default plugins, and then you can write plugins yourself and then open source it or anything and give it to people. So one such example is Git open. So how Git is doing is, so in Git, if you see the help, it will not have like the open command over here in the help. So if you notice, I'll just do a grep. So instead, okay, RG, and look for open. It's not there. So when I do this, right, what it is doing is it's looking for a binary named as git hyphen open, and that's how it's working. So each software will have its own way of interacting with plugins. So plugins or extensions is the name. Extending features or customizing features uh, of the core software. So and so this is an example. And this also tells the why, right? Why do you want to do it? Because you want to extend it and customize it according to your needs. And the working, it depends on the software. In the core, there are different ways. So one such way is like core and plugin are separate binaries. And communication, there is some kind of communication, some kind of interaction or communication. So in our case, it's a interaction wherein the core, invoked git open. When I do this, it invoked git hyphen open. So so depends on the core and okay. So this is just one example, and core and plugins are kept as separate what do you say source code, uh, and it's possible to have some default plugins. So what other ways are there, and what other plugins are there, right? We can look at that. So I haven't actually checked out about Java and other things. Have you people worked with Kubernetes? No. Okay, can you both hear me? Hello.
Okay, can you repeat that question, Karpya?
Yeah. So have you both used Kubernetes? No.
Very minimal, not
Okay.
extensively.
Okay. So Kubernetes has this client, command line client called kubectl. So even kubectl has plugins like this, right? Similar to how Git has. So kubectl has this plugin system. So here you can see provides utilities for interacting with plugins. So you can check out what plugins you have in Kubernetes, kubectl, right? So it's showing me that I have some plugin called audit and then crew, and similar to Git, it works like this. So the binary, if there is a separate binary, and the naming is the core software's name hyphen the plugin name. So if you see, if I do help and check if there's something called crew, it will not come up, but I can still do this crew and I'll see help for it. So similar to Git, I've tried out kubectl plugins, and I think even Docker has plugins. Let's check it out. I've heard of it. I've not tried it out. So let's see plugin. So yeah, Docker plugin, right? So you can list your plugins. Okay, my Docker is not running. So that's one such example. Docker plugins. So these are just command line tools, right? What I showed you, and plugins. Do server software have plugins, right? As in, I write some web app. Uh, is it possible for me to extend it or provide extensions such that other people can use it? So let's say no, I'm writing some, okay, even GitHub, right? Let's say GitHub. So I am working on GitHub and I'm a maintainer. Let's say it's I'm an employee there and I'm working on it. I want to help people extend it. So what do I do? Right. So like I said, there are different ways of interacting. For command line tools, it's pretty straightforward. Usually, some examples are just different binaries and uh, communication is through invocation of binary or some client server model with remote procedure call and all RPC, gRPC or message pack and stuff like that. You can go check it out. I'll show some examples. So what other ways can I do if it's a server-side software? You can actually provide webhooks. Have you both tried out webhooks? Hello.
Any specific example, Karpya?
Yeah,
I've
yeah, yeah.
heard a lot about
So
web, but
yeah, exactly. I agree. I don't know too much about webhooks, but this is one example. For example, let's say you have Travis or some CI/CD, right? Have you both?
correct. Okay.
Yeah,
In GitHub, we have right to listen to the latest commit and all. Okay.
yeah. So I've not gone too much into the details, but this is just my assumption. But one second, I'll show you one example though. Go CD. So this one uses Travis. Okay, I don't have settings access, right? Okay, so I'll give you an example of an architecture, but I'm not sure exactly if this is how it works in GitHub. Okay. So let's say I want to provide access to all the things happening in the GitHub repo, so that CI/CD systems can do the builds. Okay. So so how do I integrate now? So what is this webhook and the integration? So webhook is similar to your plugins or extension only, right? So just a different word. And I can do something like this. I can tell, hey, CI/CD systems, uh, you know, I can actually make a HTTP call to some endpoint with some data based on based on a spec that I define, and if you conform to it, to it. If you conform to it, as in if you understand it, that is, if you understand it, you can integrate with me. Understand the data I send, uh, you can integrate with me. Okay. So what will happen is, if Travis is my CI/CD system, CI/CD, in my GitHub repo settings, I can say I can have a configuration called webhook, and what kind of webhook it is, what kind. So I'll define that it's a push webhook. So whenever there is a push event, I will like the GitHub web app will send a you know data sends. I mean, will do a HTTP call to an endpoint with data regarding the event, push event. So now push as in I mean commit. Okay, so commit. So whenever there's a commit, this will do a call, and what Travis can now do is, Travis people can say, okay, I'll expose an endpoint on my side uh, with authentication, because not everyone should be able to call the webhook just like that. And whenever there's a call to it, there's a request sent to it, I will trigger my build. So this is how whenever you push or do a commit, your CI/CD build. So you don't have to keep listening. So instead of polling, you can actually polling or some inefficient, because polling is not really efficient. You'll have to define intervals and all. Instead of polling, you can work on push, right? So this is one example of how you can extend some web app and multiple web apps. So some web app that you create and a web app that's created by other people, right? So 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 this is an example of multiple web apps talking. So and recently and other examples for plugins that I've seen is our browser plugins, right? So in your browser you have this, for example, I have this push bullet plugin which can send URLs to your other devices. So I have other browsers and all that in my phone, and there's a Chrome browser that is here. So I can just send URLs to all of the devices that I have. And there is ad block and all that. I'm sure you people are using ad blocks. So browser plugins is another example. And recently, so I was working on this thing called Kong plugin. And so what is Kong? So one sec. Right, API gateway. So Kong is a API gateway. You can go check it out. So it's basically an Nginx with some superpowers, I would say, maybe. And so what is special about Kong and all that? Uh, you can go check it out. The short version is it has a lot of extensibility, and it's pretty fast, yeah. And so it's an API gateway, right? And what kind of plugins can you do? What kind of extensibility does it provide? So first of all, it's written in Lua, and it's written on. It works on top of Nginx, and with products, like this. Okay, Kong Hub. Okay, so I said there are some things called Kong plugins. So these are some examples of what Kong plugins are present. So what uh, what does it mean to have a plugin in Kong, and what does it help in? So let's say you have multiple APIs. You are building microservices. You have multiple APIs, and since Kong is an API gateway, it can be your one endpoint for all one gateway. Of course, multiple instances. Okay, yeah, that is for scalability. Multiple instances for all your APIs. So none of your microservices will be contacted directly, right? So through this API gateway. So why though? Let's say you are implementing some functionality like authentication or rate limiting, right? So you can do all that common functionality for all your APIs using the gateway. So how do you do that? The gateway was written by someone else. You will need customization like authentication based on some different things. So that's where Kong plugins come into play, where you can define how your authentication should happen. So here are some examples. Basic auth, like you give username, password, and all. HMAC, and then JSON Web Tokens and things like that. So that is with authentication. With security, there are some things like you can do IP restrictions, whitelist, like block list and safe list. And then there is traffic control, like rate limiting and all. So you can do so much. And if you want some custom plugin, if like this is not enough for you and this is not what you need, then you can write your own plugin in a language like in Lua by Surely. So all these plugins are created as Lua modules. So the plugin is basically just a Lua module, and you install it along with Kong, and Kong will just call it. Uh, Kong will just call your plugin, functions. So when does it call, and what is the data that your plugin gets and all that? We can talk a bit now. So how much time do we have? Okay, I'll try to finish it in like 5-10 minutes now. So plugin development. Okay, so Kong has this good introduction on what are Kong plugins and how do you write one and all that. So here you can see that so plugins are basically just Lua modules interacting with the request response objects with this thing. So I'll explain what they're trying to tell here. Let me just take this. So so since Kong is an API gateway and it works with HTTP v1 and v2, so it supports DRPC and all. So in any case, there is some concept of request and response, right, in HTTP. So your plugins will basically be, you know, just extending the API gateway, which is taking these, which is working with these two. So, and what can you do with your plugin, right? So you can actually modify your request object that is coming in from the client, or response that is coming from your microservice, and even streams. And you can also do something extra where you don't have to modify or do anything with these, instead just read from them. And for example, let's say you have authentication, right? Authentication and authorization, auth Z. So I can read from the request and read from it and say if some request is authorized or not, right? Or not. So if I do that, I can stop the request at API gateway itself if it's not authorized. So how do you do that? So Kong has this thing called life cycles. So for the plugin to be called, when should the plugin be called? So you can say that call the plugin when the request comes in, or call the plugin when the response from API comes in, right? And there are different other events in the life cycle. So they will tell you when and all your plugin can be called. So in the case of authentication and authorization, let's say I'm going to tell, call the plugin when a request comes in. So what I will do is there's this thing called Kong.request. I'll just show that. Um, So Kong provides this thing called plugin development kit. So it helps you to build your plugins using Lua. And recently they also added support for Golang. Okay. So for Lua, it's Lua modules. Uh, and for Golang, it's through a RPC model. So remote procedure call. So there is a plugin server, and you will write. I mean, there's a plugin server and Kong core which interact, and plugin server interacts with your. I mean, calls your plugin code. So and all this happens using the plugin development kit, which is called PDK. And some of the functions in the plugin development kit in both Lua and Golang are this. For example, in requests, your plugin can actually get the host, the port, and the request body and things like that, or the headers. And you can also exit the whole. For example, let's say your request is not authorized, you have to stop it at the gateway itself, for which there's something called kong.response.exit. So the request will just stop the processing there, it will not go to your API. You exit over there itself. So your plugin can say exit with some 200 or 403 or whatever you want to do. So here is an example. So it says interrupts the current processing and it produces a response. So for to see plugins using it to produce a response before Kong has a chance to process the request. So Kong does not have to process. Instead, your authentication plugin can reject the request if it's not authorized. So all these functions will be in your functions and methods and even variables will be in your plugin development kit to help you interact with Kong. And so I wrote one recently uh, by checking this out. So there's something called Kafka Upstream. So so this is an enterprise plugin. So you have to pay for your Kong Enterprise, and there's also a Kong Community Edition, which is open source. So this plugin basically what it does is it transforms your HTTP requests into Kafka message topics, right? So I wrote this plugin in Golang. So I can show the code. I'm not going to go through the code. I'm just going to show that this thing Kong string. So this is the small code that I wrote, and let me run it and show it to you. So So I'll start Kong. And okay. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so actually I should have started my Kafka because uh, apparently there are no brokers to talk to, so it just stopped. So I'll just start my Kafka. Downloads Kafka. I have to start some Zookeeper. Kafka. Okay, Zookeeper has started. Kafka has started. Okay, no, it has not. Okay, yeah, Kafka started off. And since I'm going to actually send requests to Kong and convert it into Kafka messages in a topic, after converting, basically producing that message, I have to consume and see if I really produce it or not. So I'm just going to go ahead and start a consumer also, so I can see that I really did produce the message using my plugin. So the topic is test, and I'm just going to consume from the beginning. So let's start off Kong, and it started. And so let's do a curl. So Kong has this concept of routing to different APIs based on what your host is or path is. So what I've told is if the host is Kong upstream dev, then send it to Kafka, or else it will not send it to Kafka. So in this case, I'm making a request to Kong. This is the Kong localhost 8000, and I'm making a post request with some data. So the message that I'm sending to Kafka will be basically the request body of the HTTP request. Okay, so that's what I'm going to create as message for Kafka in test topic. Okay, so let me do this. So it says message sent. If you go see in your consumer, you can see the some key, some value. It says the request body was this, and it's escaped and all that. So let's say if I make a get request or something. So if I make some get request, there will be some empty body, and if I make some not some JSON stuff and like something random, and you can see how this comes up. So I sent the message to the API gateway, and the plugin took it up and sent it to Kafka, and then stopped the response and didn't send it to any API that I didn't create at all, however, and then it sends the response. The plugin sends the response to me, and then it stops. So yep, that's it I had. Any questions? I think that was really fast.
No,
I did a lot of stuff.
So any plans on extending your plugin to some other extent for Kafka?
Yeah, buddy, I would love to collaborate too, if I can.
Okay, so actually currently I didn't do too much. I just made it work. So even the code, if you see, right, a lot of things will be hard coded. So for example, this is hard coded. And then there are a lot of configurations for Kafka, and and the code is also not very great, and I'll have to fix some stuff. Even the topic is like hard coded tests now. So this enterprise plugin provides some lot of configuration, right? So one example is, yeah, of course, that localhost thing, yeah, you can change. I should be able to change the topic. There are some timeouts that you can configure, and so currently I just converted the HTTP request body to a Kafka message. You can also convert the header, everything into a JSON. So these folks do JSON. So here, if you notice, they talk about the encoding of the request body and things like that. And you can also write it in Lua. I just didn't write it. But if you use Lua, you can use this, nice little library that they are also using, which is to interact with Kafka as a Lua client. So, and they also talk about how different message bodies can be sent to the Kafka. So I didn't actually set any content type over here, if you see, but they are saying how if the content type is not found out, then they will do base64 encoding and all that. I didn't do that. So I just assumed for now that it will be just a string, most probably a JSON or a just normal string. So yeah, so there will be a lot of this configuration stuff to be done. And currently the thing that I wrote was synchronous. So whenever the request goes, there will be a sync call to Kafka. I don't know what that exactly means, but it will be blocking, I believe. That's all I can assume. So after it is sent to Kafka, then only the response is sent. So, but they also have this thing called async. So just because you got the response doesn't mean it went to Kafka. So yeah, those kind of things are yet to be done. And then I think it will be over, but still only if someone uses it at scale, I'll know if it really performs well. Yeah, and other than that, I wrote it in Golang because so Kong has released Kong V2. So this is still V. One sec. You go to the docs. The current latest stable is 1.4. So they are releasing Kong V2, which is a breaking change. Announcement. So here, so till now there was only support for Lua language-based plugins. So whoever knew Lua can do it, or you have to just learn Lua. Recently, they brought in Golang support, Go language support for plugins. So that's why I started trying it out, and I took this Kafka plugin as an example. Since it's enterprise and all that, I thought since it's not open source, let's maybe build something that's useful.
I think it's a great move, bro.
Sorry?
I think it's a great move to go with Go.
Okay.
Lua, I don't think most of the people use. I mean, they do use for the, developing libraries and all, but we developers and not Lua. I don't think.
Right, but yeah, I mean, so Kong has been successful. I've heard many people talk about Lua and
Yeah, I think PyTorch also was developed in Lua, if I'm not
sorry,
wrong.
sorry,
PyTorch.
PyTorch. Okay,
Yeah,
I mean, I've heard of it. That's it.
it's like TensorFlow deep learning library. You can say framework.
Okay. So okay, that is in Lua. Okay. Okay, it's C++, CUDA, maybe something else in PyTorch. Okay, I don't know. So yeah, so I've heard many people talk about Lua and being surprised that it's being used in production and by Kong, but it's pretty well. It's doing well, and if you want, one motivation for you to try Lua would be, if you want this T-shirt, you can go try it with Lua.
Oh, cool.
Okay, yeah, that's my motivation to try out Kong
Thank-
V to look for some issues. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
Cool.
Okay then. Hey,
Okay.
Manikandan, how was it?
Hey, it was good, man.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Papa. Bye.
Okay, bye bye, man. Bye bye, both of you.
I'll catch you up for this, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
I think if I don't be much stupid.
No.
Cool. Thanks, yeah. Thanks for the session.
Okay,
Okay, see ya. Bye.
see you, bye bye.
Mhm.